G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, a little bit of a different intro because this is just a real short video, a little tip. I'm going to do a little bit of a repair here, and I thought, well, I'll make a video about it. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you the easy way to swap out an ESC. Right here, so I've got my ESC here, and this is pretty much a brand new build. I got really unlucky with this crash, actually. So rather than take it all apart, because look, it's not too bad on this one, but on some builds, swapping out an ESC can be a bit of a nightmare. So rather than do any of this sort of stuff, I'm going to show you the real easy way, I guess, in terms of just switching this out. So we're going to be putting this new one in. Anyway, let's get started, and I'll talk about this ESC. Alrighty, so I guess, look, it's pretty unlucky. I had a sort of one of the crashes. This is my Martian build right here, and I was taking this out from Maid, and I don't know if it was like in its first battery or its second battery, somewhere very in the early days of it flying around. It sort of clipped a tree, and the prop deformed a little bit, cut down and cut the heat shrink, and it actually knocked one of these little sort of yellow, I don't know what component that is, so drop a little comment down below if you know exactly what that is. Anyway, one of these used to be right here, so that was completely cut off. I tried to solder it back on, but no luck. My soldering skills are nowhere near good enough to try to do that. It was like a hairline sort of piece of wire you needed to solder on just here. So I didn't want to plug it in with any of that sort of stuff missing, because it is fairly new and I didn't want to risk it. So what I decided to do, we're going to be swapping in one of these today. So I'm rocking the Acon 30 amp BL Heli S ESCs. That's what all of these are. So I've got a spare one here. So let's stick it in. Now the first thing we're going to do is take this ESC out before we worry about opening up this one. And you might notice too, this one is done upside down. So at the moment I've currently got them in, I guess, upside down. And that was simply so they could line up nicely on my PDB when it was connecting, so the positive could go to the positive terminal. Otherwise, if they're around the other way, if they're around this way, they would have had to cross over. So if you're putting them on normally and you don't have them on upside down like I do, this job is going to be even easier. But if I can do it upside down, I'm sure you guys can do it when it's the right way up. So to desolder, what we need to do, just burnt myself a little bit. What we need to do, we're simply going to put a little bit of solder on the end of our soldering iron, heat up the little wires, and we should be able to separate our motor wires from our ESC pads fairly easily. Now you're probably not going to be able to see this in too much detail because it will be shrouded, but you will be able to see just how easy it comes away from the ESC. And if you want an easier time, probably take your props off as well. It's probably going to be even easier, right? So there's one. And the more I might have to tilt it up, so it might be a little bit out of focus, excuse me. Ow. Hang on, I'm going to take this prop off because that's hard. Alrighty, so I've taken that off, and now I'm simply going to desolder these two little pads just here. At least you guys can see this one. This should be a little bit better. So hopefully that's in shot there. So we're going to take those out. That sounds so violent. Take those out. Now if this was around the right way, this would be so much easier. Alrighty. And then we simply have our little signal wire and our tiny little ground wire just there as well. If you really get stuck, a good little tip, probably take a photo before you start desoldering any wires if you want to know which is which. But just for reference on these ESCs, I'm going to say the little ground wire is going on the side that has these whatever these two little components are. So I'm going to simply take these off, the signal and then the ground. And now it's time to get our new ESC ready. Before I do that, what I am going to do, I'm going to hit the ends of these wires with a little bit of fresh solder, so that'll make our joints just a little bit easier to flow together when it does come time to putting our new ESC in. Clean my soldering iron. Now we're going to open this up. So I've got my little Acon ESC just here. There we go. And it's probably worth noting too, let's pull off this heat shrink right here because we don't need that. And we can't forget to put heat shrink back on when we go to do this. So let's make sure we don't forget that. Alrighty, now I did peel off the sticker in my other one, so I'm going to do that as well. And that looks like a different ESC. Great. Well, this is surprising. Once I pulled that plastic off, check that out. They look like they're totally different. Well, they look similar. They look totally the same on the underside. So that all looks the same right there. But when I flip it over, they're about the same size. So, but they're very different on the top. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. but I guess that happens to the best of us. That's very, very surprising actually. So maybe these are different versions of the same ESC, or maybe they're different models. Maybe this is like version 1 and version 1.12 or something like that. Anyway, what I'm still going to do, look, this probably isn't recommended to mix and match ESCs. I'm still going to stick it in, have a bit of an experiment and see how it goes, but the process is going to be the same, and that's what this video is all about, is about switching these ESCs. Maybe these are the 20 version, I got a 30, because I did order this from a different shop. Anyway, if you actually know what type of ESC this is, because this is the 30 amp one, definitely drop that in the comments below, because I would be interested to see just what I should have got when I ordered one of these ones. I thought they were going to be the same. Anyway, let's keep going on with the build. Now essentially what is going to be happening is we're going to be desoldering all these wires, sticking them on here, and then we would have swapped out an ESC very easily, and we didn't have to open up anything in here or remove sort of anything that was plugging into the flight controller or any of that sort of garbage right there. It should be a very simple process. But this is a little bit different for me, because what I'm actually going to do this time, if mine went around that way, that would be very, very easy. But because I've got mine upside down, it's going to be a little bit tricky to try to solder in some of those from an angle. So what I intend to do, I'm still going to solder in these 3 motors right here and connect them up. And I'm still going to solder in these 2, but I'm actually just going to take these 2 out and use the ones that are remaining on there, because that will allow me just to push it down, and it will be a much, much easier time for me trying to solder those in than rather trying to get my soldering iron underneath here and solder that for you guys, just to prove that sort of point. Anyway, so that's the only difference, but essentially what we're going to be doing is taking off the wires on here and just swapping this one into these wires. And then I am going to desolder these 2 little ones just here. Make sure you don't get these confused. So for me, the signal wire is closest to the voltage wire. Alrighty, and a nice little tip too, definitely hit these up with a little bit of fresh solder. Some people say suck off the old solder and all that, but look, this is just what works for me. So putting a little bit of flux on here. And some on these 2. Excuse my head in case it gets in this shot. Alrighty, now first things first, I'm going to solder my motor wires up to my ESC. There's 1. 2. Ow. And 3. Right, yeah, so there's pretty much half of it done. Now while I'm here, I am going to take these ones off because we don't need these. But if I was doing this with a normal facing ESC, I would have left that up. I would have left those in right there. Alrighty, so you can see that's going to go down and it's going to solder in, and I'll just have to cut those sort of as, I might even cut them now, so I'm going to cut those 2. Now before I forget, put a little bit of heat shrink on, because that's going to make your job a lot easier. Oh, what is in there? Gee, all sorts of surprises. What is this? Like a little, let's have a look. What is that? I think that's like a spider's egg sac. Gross. Rightio, so let's continue, not get too distracted just there. So what I'm going to do, I am now, why these are sort of, because these are the 2 wires that are the longest, I'm going to solder up my ground wire and also my signal wire to my ESC. I guess the ground wire, this little one right here. Now this might be out of focus or out of shot for you guys, because that is going to be a little bit tight. I'm going to have it on its side and sort of just try to get in and out. So hopefully you can see that, but if not, you're just going to have to bear with me, and then we'll continue. Right here, so that was probably out of shot because I had to move that so I could get in a little bit closer, so I apologise for that. But essentially what I've done, I've put the signal wires and the ground wires on. Right here, so they're on there. I'm going to slide my heat shrink back up, and now all I need to do is just resolder these 2 back to the PDB, the positive and the ground wire, the main ground wire that came with it. If for some reason you weren't actually doing this step and your ESCs were around the right way, this would have been even easier, and you would be good to go. So let's solder these 2 up. So I'm going to put my positive in right now. There we go, so there's 1. Rightio, so there's my ground. And now I'm just going to heat shrink that down and that will be good to go. Rightio, so there it is. There's my new ESC in here. All I've got to do is I'm going to heat shrink it down and double check what firmware is on there. Don't forget, if you have any other settings on here, so maybe if you had your motor direction reversed or anything like that, you will also need to do that in the BealHeli suite in the ESC to set them up so that make sure that they're the same. And then I also recommend making sure all the firmware is on the same on all of the ESCs and updating them to the latest firmware. And the other thing, calibrate your ESCs as well. So do that in CleanFlight just to make sure that everything's honky-dory. So hopefully that helps some of you guys out there, because I know changing an ESC can be a little bit daunting, but if you do it this way, you can do it fairly quick, especially if you're out in the field or anything like that and you've only got one quad. Maybe someone does have a soldering iron or a spare ESC. You might be able to get up and get flying again. Anyway, subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying! How crazy, it's like, you guys have probably heard things about like Australian animals and spiders trying to kill you and stuff. So when you actually do find a spider's empty egg sac, it's a little bit concerning actually, because there's a lot of things down here that they do seem to be quite nasty if you run into them. Anyway, happy flying. Hopefully I'm here tomorrow.